Shirley had become a byword, but Brennan Siding had many bywords, some of which were meaningless adages that would leave an outsider totally confused as to what the insider was talking about. Some of the bywords had been passed down from previous generations, so that even the present-day residents of Brennan Siding didn't know why they were using them. For instance, someone might say, he grabbed a bag of flour and never cried crack, till he hit the top of the hill. A beautiful woman was described as a Martha Lebbins. Martha Lebbins had been dead for 100 years, but obviously she had been very beautiful. Something expensive and new was referred to as a cream of tartar. I hear you got a new canoe. Yep. Is it a good one? She's a cream of tartar. A conversation outside Bernie Hanley's store might go, would you like a drink of rum, Dan? Sure would, Stan. I'm drier than a cornmeal fart. How you like it? Trip a ghost. How you like that Ford you bought? She's a cream of tartar. Fast? Blue streak. Didn't matter if the car was red or yellow. If it was fast, it was a blue streak. If anything moved slowly, one might say slower than cold molasses. After Shadrach fired the .303, the boys held their breaths and listened to a silent forest. They all ran a blue streak all the way to the river. Nutbeam, on the other hand, went into his camp, removed his 30-30 from the wall, and went creeping around about the forest. He crept as silent as an undertaker's belch, as slow as cold molasses. Nutbeam had heard 2 boys running and was very afraid. That trumpet must have been louder than I thought. The whole country's been listening to me play. Nutbeam was not only afraid, he was also embarrassed. He vowed he'd never play the trumpet again. Like Dryfly, Nutbeam was shy about playing in front of anyone. Living in the forest was changing Nutbeam. It was making him very timid. He may have been taking on the way of the animal, for, like the animal, the sound of the rifle shot had spooked him into an even deeper hiding, made him even more cunning, and, in a word, wild. He stopped practicing his trumpet playing. He stopped boarding the train at Brennan Siding. Instead, he went to Gordon, 2 miles upstream. He continued to stand in the shadows, listening to the radio, but he stopped listening to Lyndon Tucker's. Instead, he crossed the footbridge, always on the darkest nights, to stand outside of Shirley Ramsay's house. The Ramsays always played the radio at a much greater volume than Lyndon Tucker, and with Nutbeam's acute hearing, he could hear Freddie McKenna singing from 30 yards away. On some nights, Nutbeam got a very much appreciated bonus. Those were the nights when Dryfly stepped onto the porch with his guitar. Dryfly still had a lot to learn on the guitar, but to Nutbeam, Dryfly was the very best. Great, A1, couldn't be better. Pretty near as good as Doc Williams. He'll be famous someday. Doc Williams did not come from Brennan Siding. Kid Baker did not live 12 minutes up the Gordon Road. Hank Snow did not include Brennan Siding in his songs. I've been everywhere. Elvis Presley did not stand on the Brennan Siding footbridge on moonlit nights singing Love Me Tender to Nene or Nagy Ramsay. Nobody from Brennan Siding could claim fame or fortune. A store clerk, scaler, or a timekeeper was the ultimate goal. Both men and women never talked about what they'd achieved, but instead talked about what they could have achieved. I could have been a doctor, Stan Tooney said at the store one night, then added, if I'd have gone to school. John Caston was this far from becoming a preacher, but Dad needed me to work in the woods with him. This far was a very long way. I could have been a great musician, said Baum Natch. All he needed was the proper training, practice, and something to work with. It was that way all over the Miramichi area, tributaries included. David Thornton from Millerton would have been rich if the 9, last number on his sweepstake ticket, had have been a 4. That lad from Oaktown, what's his name? John Betts? No, not John, that other lad there. You know the lad, he would have been the premier if he had won the election. Oh yeah, that lad. And of course, Yvonne Durrell. Yvonne Durrell was never thought of in Brennan Siding as the boxer who was the light heavyweight champion of the British Empire, covering Britain, Canada, Australia, a smidgen of real estate in South America, and a third or more of Africa. Yvonne Durrell was that lad from Bay St. Anne, who would have been the champion of the world had he beaten Archie Moore. At the post office one morning, Bert Totter said, "Dryfly, me boy. You could be a singing star someday if you had half a chance." Dryfly wondered which chance Bert referred to, and if Bert knew, the Miramichi would have been a great center, only for the Miramichi Fire of 18.5. When Shad left the Wallace's cabin, he met the warmth of a July evening. He took the path that led from the Cabbage Island salmon to Judge Martin's cabin. Judge Martin rarely came to his cabin, and because it was private and a peaceful place, endowed with a terrific view of the river, Shad often went there to think and relax. Shadrach Nash sat on Judge Martin's veranda to watch the night settle in on what he thought was the prettiest place in the whole world. Shad couldn't decide whether he felt happy or sad. That he felt different was all he knew. God, she's a pretty thing, he thought. Got lots of money, too. Marry that one, and a man would never have to cut pulp for a living, that's for sure. Shad had a vision of a big white house in the city, a new car in the yard, and maybe a pickup truck for him to drive whenever Lillian needed the car to go to work. Shad never thought of himself as ever going to work, but Lillian will work, he thought. She'll be a clerk or a teacher, and I'll just look after things. Lillian will come home after work, all pretty and dressed to kill, and I'll be settin' right back in me big chair, with me feet up, smoking me pipe, waiting to tell her that I made $100 selling something. I'll be a salesman and not have to work. I'll live in a big city like New York or Bangor or even Wheeling, West Virginia, and play the banjo with Bill Monroe. All I have to do is get Lillian to fall in love with me. To do that, I'll have to get her to, he didn't know, kiss me? One kiss, sure. That would be a good start. A woman would have to love you if you kissed her, wouldn't she? It wasn't long before Venus showed itself in the sky, said, "Okay, gang, the sky's clear. You can come out now." Pop, 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 pop. The stars commenced to shine. Thump came a noise from downstream. Shad recognized it as a pole making contact with the side of a canoe. "Moo," went Shad. "Moo," answered Dryfly from down in front of Sam Little's cottage. Shad knew that Dryfly was in the process of borrowing Sam Little's canoe for that night. Borrowing without asking, thought Shad. What's the difference between that and stealing? He could hear the plunk, plunk, plunk of the pole as Dryfly pushed his way through the Dungarvan current until he hauled up in front with a scraping sound against the rocks. Shad? Yeah, up here. Dryfly could not see Shad in the shadow of the veranda. He tossed the anchor onto the shore and headed toward the camp. How'd you make out with Lillian? The very best. Kissed her twice. Once in front of the fireplace and once on the veranda. On the lips? Of course. Dryfly sat beside Shad, his breath laboring from his climb up the embankment to the camp. Lillian showed me a picture of Elvis Presley, said Shad. We'll have to let our hair grow out more, and he's got a little curl to his lip, like this. Like what? Light a match. A match was struck. Like this. Huh? How's this? A little more? Well, Shad realized that Dryfly could never look like Elvis. Dry had a long head, a big nose, and a peaked chin with a very thin upper lip. Dryfly's hair was brown and fine, and combed over the part on the left side. He's homelier than Shirley Ramsey, thought Shad, and chuckled to himself. The lip looks great, lied Shad, but you'll have to start combing your hair back and let your sideburns grow. You really kissed Lillian? I was alone with her for 4 hours. What do you think? You in love with her? I think so. Dryfly was very disappointed. He, too, was in love with Lillian, although he hadn't spoken to her. What do you want to do? Asked Shad. I don't know. Go home and go to bed, maybe? What do you want to go to bed for? It's summer. I don't know. Tired, maybe? I thought we might pull up to Gordon. What for? Something to do. You don't get many warm nights like this around here, said Shad. You gonna see her tomorrow night? Pretty likely. Me and Lily would kind of like to get married. Kind of young, ain't ya? Not right away. Couldn't now if we wanted to. Why? Lillian's a Catholic and I'm a Baptist. You could turn with her. Lillian said she'd turn with me if I went to church on Sunday, Shad sighed. But old Bill's gonna be hard to deal with. Would have been easy if it had been you. Dry, I'm the man she loves, and we're gonna have to do the best we can. Shad hadn't spoken a single word of truth, but what he was saying added a nice wing to his fantasy. Marrying Lillian and moving off to live the life of the rich was the best thing that could happen, but simply knowing and being in love with his rich girl was an important attention-getter in itself. Even if they never married or saw each other again, the intimate contact with her would be good for his reputation. Poor Shadrach, people would say. His poor heart's been broken. He loved that American girl. Never seen him with another woman after. His heart will always be in the States. Yes, I know, and him so brave too. Shadrach Nash, the one who shot the Toggerbrook Looper. He would have been a rich man today if her mean old father, the fish hog, Had have thought of the poor girl's happiness. Got any more of the dried tobacco left? Dry? Got a new pack. Made 50 cents today picking blueberries. Dryfly handed Shad the tobacco. The blueberries ripe yet, Dry? Not quite. They're still red because they're green. Dryfly really didn't want to spend his warm summer's nights at home in bed. He wasn't really tired. Dryfly was envious, jealous, and hurt. I didn't even get a crack at her, he thought. Lillian wants you and me to go visit her tomorrow night. Wants you to take your guitar. I told her you were a great singer. I'll take the guitar, but I ain't singing. Let's go to Jordan. I'll pull. Okay, why not? It took Shad 45 minutes to pull the canoe to Gordon. He didn't mind the work. Being on the most beautiful river in the world was all the reward he needed. Shadrach pushed the canoe ashore. They both jumped out and pulled it up on the rocky beach. So what are we going to do now? Asked Dryfly. Let's have a smoke, said Shadrach. Dry started walking back and forth in circles. What are you looking for? Asked Shad. A soft rock to set on, said Dry. You fool, laughed Shad. The boys sat on a rock and rolled cigarettes, lit up, and eyed their surroundings. There was the starlit sky overhead, the barns and houses of Gordon on the hills on both sides of the river, and here and there a sport camp. Randall Brook murmured as it entered the river across from where they sat. They watched the lights in the houses going out and knew it was bedtime in Gordon. Everything other than the murmuring brook was very quiet. The boys sat and smoked until the last light was out and all 14 houses and 8 sport camps were in darkness. The time's about right, said Shad. Yep. Okay, let's give her hell. Bark, 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 yip, 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 yelp, 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 went the two boys as loud as they could, so that their voices echoed off the hills. Somebody's dog started barking then somebody else's, then another, and another, until every dog in Gordon, and there was a good many of them, started barking. A light came on, then another, and another. Windows were lifted, doors were opened, dogs were cussed and called. When the inhabitants of Gordon had calmed their dogs into silence, they switched their lights off and went back to bed. We'll give her a while, said Shad. Here, have another smoke. Thanks. Know any jokes? Who killed the Dead Sea? I don't know. Who? Some lad painted red china. Lillian tell you that? No, Dad. I like it. Funny. Know what I'm gonna be when I grow up? What? Salesman for potato bugs? Dryfly chuckled. He liked that joke too. I'll have to remember that one, he thought. Ready? Asked Shad. Ready. Bark, bark, yip, 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 yelp, yelp, yelp. Again, their voices echoed off the hillsides and starting the dogs barking. It took a little longer this time, but again, lights came on, windows were lifted, doors were opened, and dogs were cussed and called. Is that a star up there? Asked Shad, pointing to the Big Dipper. I don't know. I'm a stranger around here. You just think of that? Yep, it just sort of popped into me head. Good one, eh? Yep, it's a good one. Have to remember it. They've all gone to bed again. Yeah, give it a few more minutes. No, hurry. Here, have another smoke. Know what I heard, Dry? No, what? Heard your brother Paladin's a fruit. Where'd you hear that? Everybody's saying it. He might be. He sure does act fruity. Reads all the time. Acts like a woman, too. He'll get his head kicked in one of these days. I'll kick his head, and if he ever touches me, he won't touch you. He's my brother. Bark, bark, bark. Yip, yip, yip. Yelp, yelp, yelp. Lift, lift, lift. Slam, slam, slam. Get in here, you son of the... Here, skippy, skippy, skippy. Here, pal, pal, pal. Here, spot, spot, spot. Lights out, back to bed. Shad and Dry smoked and played this game for an hour or so, then headed back to Brennan's siding. They didn't paddle, but drifted on the current, watching the stars. When they drifted past Helen McDonald's farm, they didn't know that Helen's dog, Rex, was relieving himself for the third time on the kitchen floor. The blueberry pie with the X-lax was taking its effect. Rex was pooping a blue streak.